All right, the satellites are linking up. We are connecting with YouTube, and we are momentarily live. And we're good. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bring up the presentation. First off, thank you all for being here with us today. I am going to be sharing some information with you tonight regarding the reopening plan for Ashburton Elementary. Just as we have in these past meetings, I'm thankful to have Thea Joslow manning the chat. You may surface questions throughout. Thea, can I get a thumbs up that my screen is what folks are looking at? Awesome. So what I'm going to do tonight is normally these town halls have involved me responding to pre-submitted and other questions. I'm going to present the current state of our reopening plan to you all. We'll then have an opportunity to ask questions through the chat as we have in the past. Thea's going to pitch those to me and I'm going to answer them. We are recording this meeting, so we are going to be sending this out to the community as a follow-up as well. So I do want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to listen, even if they couldn't be here tonight. And some parents did reach out to us to say as much. So we'd ask that you use the chat to surface questions throughout. Just like I did last time, I'm going to make the recommendation that you hold questions until we get closer to the end of the presentation, because it's likely that I'm going to answer some of your questions along the way. It's also fair to admit that, when I came to you last week, we talked about having the bones of the plan or the skeleton of a plan. Well, we've added a lot of meat to that plan, and there are things that we're going to add to it as we move forward, the skin, the hair, everything else, until it looks and walks and talks like a reopening plan. We are about a month out from reopening with students, and we are really excited to see that. At the end of this meeting, we're also going to do something different. We're going to provide you with a Google link, a Google form, if you will, to collect any additional questions that might not have been answered tonight. So I do want to honor that there are a lot of questions that are going to come out of tonight. There's a lot of questions that you had coming in tonight, and I am going to do my very best to answer all of them. So with that being said, our agenda kind of breaks down into 4 points tonight. The first is I'm going to provide some updates on the reopening itself. We're going to talk about the timeline for changing your request, when you should expect confirmation and what to do if you want to change your request. First off, if you like your confirmation, there's nothing you need to do. Please don't call the office. We want to make sure our phone lines are open. Right, Ms. Jacobs? I see she's joined us this evening. I've made a promise to her on that. Then what I'm going to do is spend time talking to you about what the day-to-day is shaping up to look like for the students that come back in person. Again, the vast majority of this reopening plan has to do with the in-person instruction, as the all-virtual instruction is going to continue to look just as it is, only possibly with some scheduling tweaks that we'll talk about along the way. And then the fourth component of tonight is really going to talk about next steps and questions that you all have. Again, feel free to use the chat, but I also recommend hold the questions until we get closer to the end so that we can possibly get some of the chat cleared out with the ones that we've answered. So again, as I've been saying all along, it's important to remember that everyone in the community is in a different circumstance. I'm in a different circumstance than any of you are, and all of you are in a different circumstance than the person in the Zoom tile next to you. Sorry, somebody's recording the meeting. I guess we can go with it. I've already got it recording via YouTube, but we'll go through that too. All right, so we want to make sure that people understand that our staff are part of this community, our parents are part of this community, and everyone is in a different set of circumstances with a different set of needs. And so we want to honor that as we share the plan with you tonight. We also want to remind everyone that there is no perfect plan for a pandemic. This is the first time that I've been through a pandemic. This is the first time that our community has, and we're really trying hard to come up with the best plan that meets the most needs in our community. Clearly, all of you have expressed an interest in coming back for in-person instruction overwhelmingly. I think we might have one of the largest return numbers in MCPS. And so I want to be clear that our plan is really geared at getting all of our students into the building and maximizing that time with them, while also prioritizing the virtual learning for the families that need that. And also, this is our plan. Every school's plan is going to look slightly differently based on the parent preference data, based on the availability of staffing. So we do want to be clear about that. So just a couple of things before we get started. You saw an email from me last week about further information sessions. First off, we are going to be holding partial in-person parent orientation sessions, tentatively scheduled for the week of March 8th to the 12th for the families that were confirmed for selection for in-person instruction. If you initially indicated in your survey that you wanted in-person instruction, we are planning for you to come in. We'll talk about those of you that opted virtual and now want to switch, and we'll talk about that in a second. We haven't determined the format for these meetings yet because we want to be able to maximize their effectiveness with parents. And so we're considering looking at it by grade level, looking at it by grade level band. Clearly, our brand new kindergartners who've never set foot in the building have different needs than some of our families that have been with us many, many years. So we're going to differentiate these sessions, and we're going to work to orient our students and our families to the building. We're going to talk about starting successfully, health and safety procedures, schedules, what to bring, and we'll talk a little bit about each of these tonight, what arrival and dismissal is going to look like, and it is going to be different than in the past, and a lot more as well. I'm also holding principal office hours. What these are going to be are, I'm going to open up a Zoom link, and if you have questions that are specific to you and your family, or you and your student, you may join at the times here. I've sent out the links. I'm going to be rebroadcasting them. There's no formal agenda for these times. It's just time for you to get with me to ask questions. The one question I will not answer is, Mr. Mullenholz, what would you do if you were blank's father? And the reason I say that is many of you are asking me what I should do or what I would do if your child was my child. And the answer is your family is in a very different set of circumstances than mine is. I will share openly that I have 2 children in MCPS, a 4th grader and a kindergartner, and they are remaining all virtual, having nothing to do. We would love for them to go back in person, but our family circumstances do not allow for that at this time. That is not a judgment about the reopening. I really, really wish my kids could go to the building in person, but they cannot at this time. So I just want to be open and upfront about that, but that's my circumstance. Should the circumstances be different, I want my kids in school, but that's just not for us right now. So that's the answer I'm going to give you. And if you ask me about your child, I'll put you on the couch and I'll try to talk you through it and answer some questions to help you make the best decision for your family. I also want to pause before we jump into it, say none of this is going to be possible and none of this has been possible without our amazing staff. And we talked last time, I encourage you to reach to your child's teacher, to the staff, to say thank you. I'm not only going to encourage you again, but I'm going to provide you the easiest vehicle I can think. If you want to, throughout the meeting tonight, at the end of the meeting tonight, or in the days that come, use the bit.ly link at the bottom of your screen, which we'll also post in the chat for you. Send a note of kindness. The month of February is about love and appreciation. I can think of no better way than to send a positive note to our teachers who have been working really, really hard to get this up and running. And so I appreciate their support as well. So jumping into some quick updates on reopening. First off, important dates. I thought about having a poll or a quiz at the end for all of you, but I wanted to make sure that I honor the time that we have. Next Tuesday, February 23rd, starting at 3:30, is a Board of Education meeting. I am prohibited from informing any parent of the confirmation of their selection, of the child's selection for in-person or all virtual learning until after the conclusion of that meeting. So I don't know if I'm going to be doing it late on Tuesday night or on Wednesday morning, but one way or another, you will get an electronic communication from me on the 23rd or 24th via email that tells you your child has been selected for in-person learning, your child's teacher is Miss or Mr. X. Here's some scheduling information related to the A or B rotation. You have until February 26th to request a change. Many of you have already started doing so, and that's certainly okay. February 26th is the last day that you can do so. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. March 1st through 12th is a blackout period during which no changes will occur. That's the time where we readjust our staffing and other approaches based on the parent preference changes and based upon the availability of staff, any changes therein. And then according to the current schedule, phase 1.1 begins on March the 15th. Phase 1.2 begins no later than April 6th. Just as a reminder of what that means at Ashburton, In phase 1.1, March 15th, grades kindergarten, first, second, and third. We will also be asking our homeschool model students with disabilities in grades 4 and 5 to join us for phase 1.1. If that's your child's case manager will be reaching out to you later in this process to talk through what that'll look like. And then no later than April 6th, we'll be welcoming back our grades 4 and our grade 5 students. So that's what it means for Ashburton, because again, we are a non-focused school. That also means that every child in kindergarten, first and second grade, starting on March 15th, will receive 4 days a week of in-person instruction. That will be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then grades 3, starting on March 15th, will be on an A week, B week rotation that I'll outline here in a second. And grades 4 and 5 will join them in that A week, B week rotation, starting no later than April 6th. I talked about our homeschool model programs, our LAD students, or hours-based, I should say, students, and our resource students. Again, your child's teacher will be, case manager will be in touch with you. We talked about this in the last meeting, but there are several instructional models used throughout the day. Primarily at the elementary level, we're talking about the support model. That does include some opportunities for direct instruction, small groups, one-on-one, whole group instruction. Really, that's going to be based upon what the needs in the class are and how the teacher is managing both a virtual setting and an in-person setting, as well as with the support of our non-classroom-based staff, including special education and ESOL. I also want to remind everyone that at this point, every child at Ashburton is coming back to Ashburton in person or staying virtually with the same teachers they currently have. So again, I want to be clear about that they have the same teachers that they currently have. We are not resectioning children into new teachers or different teachers. Those of you that are currently with Mrs. Fox in kindergarten, we are adding Mrs. Mackenzie Garrison. Miss Mackenzie Garrison in as a co-teacher to that class. So you'll have the long-term sub, that's Miss Sala, but you'll also continue to have Miss Garrison as you have since she joined our staff. And by the way, she has been phenomenal, and we are excited to have her. Ms. Fox's class has that additional support because they have close to 20 of the 23 students who want to return in person at this point. And I needed an additional teacher to meet that need in person because I can't put 20 kids in a room. So Ms. Garrison was hired to support that class, so we're lucky to have her. This is a reminder that grades 3 to 5 will be every other week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And all students K to 5, Wednesday is a completely virtual day with the same schedule that they currently have. I want to talk a little bit about staffing here. I mentioned that our classrooms are going to be staffed primarily with your child's teachers. Where your child's teacher has received either the telework accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act, they will be teaching the class virtually, but we will have other adults in the classroom supporting your child as they access that learning with the teacher. I also want to be clear, I've gotten a lot of questions from parents about paraeducators, and we love our supporting staff. We love our paraeducators, but we want to be really clear that because of the operational needs, their schedules are going to look very different. So if your child currently has the opportunity to work with Mr. Kirchen or Miss Gore during the course of the day, that likely is going to change. We are prioritizing that our paraeducators are in classrooms supporting instruction as much as possible, but there are going to be circumstances now that we're operating a building in a very different way than we ever have before, where we need their support more now than ever. So their schedules will shift, but your child will still see them in some regard. Again, I talked about our goal being to maximize direct instruction, providing virtual learning for all students, and honoring that our teachers are going to be balancing both a virtual group and an in-person group as well. I also just want to remind everyone that staffing is subject to change based on parent preference data. And any of those staffing changes would be made and then communicated with parents during the weeks of March 1st to 12th. So we just want to be upfront and transparent to that. The other thing I do want to share is that as was shared in a memorandum of understanding between MCEA and MCPS, staff do have the right and the ability to take leave from the system and or resign from the system if they feel that they're being compelled to come into the building is not in the best interest of them or their family. As I said, everyone in this family or in this community, including our staff, do have to consider the needs of their families, and I do support them in that. So I just want to be clear about that. So a little bit of information about staffing. I've been asked this and I cannot provide this. If a staff member resigns, takes leave, or is teleworking because they have an accommodation, I cannot provide that information to any parent. I can't even provide that information to the staff except in certain circumstances. If there is a change to your child's assigned teacher of record, you will be notified. If your child's teacher is working remotely due either to an accommodation or an operational need, that teacher will still remain your child's teacher of record, but there is a chance that you will have other adults in the room working with your child. I'm not able to share the information in advance. When your child does arrive on the first day, if there's another adult in the room, that will be an indicator that the teacher is working remotely. As I said, if there's a change to the teacher of record, I will then share that with you electronically in advance of March the 15th. So just a quick update, I've gotten questions about this, and I want to make it very clear that students and staff and visitors are required to wear masks throughout the course of the day. That includes buses, that includes recess. I'll cover that here in a second. I just want to be clear about that the social distancing guidelines are definitely still in place. I also want to clarify, because I've gotten a lot of emails about this. The March 15th and the April 6th phases are not timelines for all students to return. They are the timelines for students whose parents opted them into returning to partial in person when MCPS sent the original survey out. There is a wait list that we're keeping, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Other health and safety measures that you're going to see in place, and I do want to be clear that there's much more information to come about this, but there is going to be hand washing scheduled throughout the day at all transitions, before, after lunch. We'll be washing a lot of hands throughout the course of the day. We will be providing additional masks as replacements to students, but we do recommend that parents that are sending their children to in person pack additional masks that the kids may like better than the generic one-size-fits-all masks that are going to be provided by MCPS. Similar to those kindergarten parents who pack an extra change of clothes, this would be the new version of that. There is some specialized PPE being purchased and provided for things like general music class, for instrumental music classes, and in other circumstances. Health, quarantine, contact tracing, and other information is forthcoming from MCPS and the Department of Health and Human Services. That will be provided in advance of or at the orientation meetings with parents. I do want to also indicate that within our building, we will have designated quarantine spaces that will be supported by adults should students or staff begin to show symptoms. Again, we'll go into more detail on that when we get to that point where we have the clear guidance from MCPS and the Department of Health and Human Services. There will also be severe limitations on visitors. Most of you won't make it past the front office. You won't be able to walk your child down the hall. You will not be able to visit for lunch or recess. You will not be able to visit the classrooms at all. You'll be stopped at the office and we'll help you there. Ms. Reese and Ms. Locke have been overseeing building preparations, signage, spacing, desk placement, you name it, that they've been working on it. Again, I want to elevate, as we did last week, that water fountains have been turned off. We do have a bottle filling station, and MCPS is working on an access solution for water as we get closer to the reopening. But students and staff at this point should plan on bringing some of their own water from home. We're going to work with our students to orient them to the new restroom and other procedures as we get ready for that. And again, those spaces are being prepared for use by students. Just a quick glance at what a classroom looks like. This is one shot from one classroom. And those of you that have been with us for a number of years know that each of our little classrooms has a lot of character. They're each very different in the way that they're laid out and what they look like. But this is a sample to show you that we have about 12 to 16 desks in a room, spread about 6 feet apart. We have to account for occupancy limits that do include the adults that will be working in the room. But you can see we've removed all of the extraneous furniture. Our teachers will have some time on March 8th, 9th, and 10th to get their spaces set up and create the rooms in a way that welcomes our students. So I just want to be clear about that. So I'm going to shift over to part 2, which is the confirmation and changing your request. As I mentioned, the Board of Ed is meeting on February the 23rd to take the final vote on whether or not a March 15th restart is feasible. On or shortly after the conclusion of that meeting, we will be notifying you of your child's selection confirmation electronically. As I shared, if you indicated in the initial MCPS survey that you preferred for your child to come in for partial in person, you will have a spot and we will be welcoming you in. This information will include the teacher of record. It will include any scheduling information. It will not include information about if your child's teacher is working virtually or in the building. I am not able to share that information due to privacy laws that surround it. And then parents have until February the 26th to make a change by contacting Mrs. Jacobs. Again, I've sent this out in an email. We'll continue to send it out. You should do that by email. It's the easiest way to do it. She puts your name on the wait list. During the week of March 1st through 5th is when we take a look at any parents that have opted to change from in-person to virtual and thus created a spot, or if we have any spots to begin with. I am going to be transparent here to say that many of our kindergarten through second grade classrooms are at capacity right now, and that space would only be available if space should open up. I also want to clarify that Ashburton has 38 teachers. We hired Mackenzie Garrison as the 39th. That means that I only have 39 classrooms within which to put students. I cannot create additional classrooms, nor do I actually have physical classrooms to create. So that is something, this is what we talk about space availability. So if you are returning, if you want to change from partial in-person to the all virtual option, you can call Mrs. Jacobs and she'll make the change right away. She will let you know. We'll change it in the system and you'll get that confirmation selection letter if you do it before, I believe it's February 22nd. If you do it after that, we'll still make the change on the back end. So all you have to do is email Marnie and she'll take care of you. If you are wanting to go from all virtual because now there's a vaccine available or your family's situation has changed and you want to be partially in person, you're also going to contact Marnie, but she won't make that change. We cannot guarantee that change. During the week of March 1st to 5th, we will work with our team to make the shifts in both directions. And then we will notify parents that their change has been confirmed. So please do expect that. Again, we're bound by the maximum number of students we can have in a classroom and the maximum number of staff that we have available to us. We are not a school that has 80 kids coming back and only 6 teachers coming into the building. We have 39 teachers. All 39 are coming to provide instruction to our students. Every single one of our classrooms and then some is being used to house these students. Some parents have asked about, can I start later than March 15th? There is information coming about travel and quarantine. I know there's been a lot of questions about that. I don't have the answers to that tonight. But we also understand that some people have children that start in phase 1.2, and it's actually more of a challenge to start the children in 1.1 and then pivot to 1.2. Yes, you may start later. If we notice that there's some oddities in your child's attendance in person, we are going to be reaching out to you. But if you think that your child's only going to be coming 1 day a week, my recommendation is that you opt to go with the all virtual so that we can open that space up for someone's family that needs their child to come the 4 days a week. So obviously, like I said, right now, if we're confirming the selection, that's the way it is. But we do want to make sure that people understand that we don't want this to be kind of an a la carte, but at the same time, we also understand that families have very unique needs. Again, space is at a premium at Ashburton, so we're unfortunately not able to just create additional classes. And so let's talk a little bit about what the day-to-day looks like. So the first thing is you got to come to school. So we do have an arrival. We're going to have to do some quirky things with our arrival to make this work, because as much as we love to have 30 buses and 300 cars descend on our school property all at the same time, that puts us in a challenging position in terms of ensuring social distance guidelines. Our bell times are the same as they were in last year and the year before. 9 o'clock is the start of instruction. Dismissal begins at 3:25. The start of instruction may need to be a little bit different this year than in years past, because we know that we're going to be dealing with a longer arrival. We are looking at staggering arrival. We don't know if we're going to do it alphabetically by grade or something like that. And we know that it's not going to work perfectly. So if you're in like the 8:50 shift and you're there at 8:49, we're not going to tell you to wait. But what we're asking is that you all work with us in terms of staggering the arrival of students so that we can do it efficiently, so we can get you and your child in and out of the parking lot as quickly as possible. We'll be contacting families through the orientations to talk about what that looks like. And unfortunately, our patrols, due to safety and health concerns, will not be patrolling the bus or the streets or the sidewalks or the hallways. That is going to be managed by adults. Again, we want to make sure that our students are as safe and healthy as possible. All right, if you're riding the bus, you go to the local bus stop. We'll be sharing the information about that once it's confirmed with the Department of Transportation. We're going to be meeting with them on Monday, and I'm assuming thereafter. Buses will load about a maximum of 20 students. I want to be clear, if there are 40 kids at the bus stop, they're going to take 20 of them, and then they're going to circle back and pick up the remainder. So please make sure that your child has an adult with them so that they aren't standing at the bus stop for long periods of time. Some stops will require multiple runs. Buses that show up early to Ashburton will have to wait until we are allowed to pull them off of the bus, because we cannot have students unattended, mingling, not socially distancing. So we'll be managing that. Once they get there, they'll be identified by bus route and color. We're working through what that would look like. We think that our traditional sticker approach is going to need to be beefed up a little bit, and also to make it contactless. So we're working as a team through some of those minor details. And then we're also talking, I mentioned this last time, with rethinking where the car loop and the bus loop are, given that we expect a much larger number of cars than we've ever had before. And there's probably fewer carpools happening now than there ever have before. We're going to get some preliminary information from our in-person families about their method of transportation to school in the coming weeks. So do stay tuned for that as well. Car riders and walkers. Walkers can come, they can still walk to school. They cannot come into the building any earlier than 8:50. So we ask that you not send your children out at 8:20 or 8:30 to loiter or to wander, are some of the verbs that we might use here. But we want to make sure that as soon as they get there, they go right into the building. We're also looking at designating certain entrances for certain functions, certain grade levels, possibly. Those are things that we're considering, and we're working with our plant operations folks as well. For dismissal, when all of our students that are in person, there's always going to be a circumstance where a parent may want to come pick them up, even if they ride the bus or they're normally a walker. Every in-person parent, every in-person child is going to be assigned an ID number, and is going to be given a card that you can display in your windshield when you come through the car loop to pick your child up. That's how we're going to call for your child to come from their classroom down for dismissal. We cannot do the centralized dismissals that we've had in the past. So this is going to be a time crunch here. So we're going to work with you on that. But it also is safe for us because you display that in your windshield. You don't have to roll your window down and yell out who the kid is. We're going to just work it that way. We'll also figure out a backup system for that. Again, something under development, but more information to come. Your kids are going to be lugging some Chromebooks back and forth. We're going to be providing cases. We will have extra Chromebooks and chargers on site. Should your child leave their Chromebook in their backpack and not charge it overnight, they need to take it home in case there's any type of quarantining need. They also need it for the Wednesday all virtual day. And if they're on an A-week, B-week rotation, they're going to need to access it virtually in the week that they're not in school. So that your child may need to transport some books and materials back and forth. We'll be providing you with a clear list by grade level for that. And we are, as I mentioned earlier, MCPS is working on an access solution for water. Students will have personal storage space. They will have all personal materials. There is no shared materials. I got a great question from a staff member today about indoor recess. There are no indoor recess games. There will not be checkers or Connect Four. We will not be playing Twister. We didn't do it before, and certainly you don't play Twister in a pandemic. So we want to make sure that people understand that indoor recess, as an example, will be children situated at their desk in their 6-foot square, working something independently or virtually or reading or otherwise. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So again, I want to review what the model may look like within the classroom. You have a teacher in K-2 who's not only teaching a group of students that are at home, but they're also providing instruction to students that are in front of them. That can look a variety of different ways based upon the grade level, based upon the needs of the teacher. But again, I commend our teachers for their hard work in making it work in two realms here. If you're in grades 3 to 5, you're looking at a rotational model where you've got a group of students in person in week A, and then they go home for week B. And a group of students that was at home in week A comes home in week B. And you have a group of students in week A and week B that are always at home. Those are the all virtual students. This is how we're able to keep our current students with their current teachers. So again, to balance that out, that's going to be a lot of work for our teachers. If you would like to send them a note of thanks and or praise for the work they've done to date, we'll pepper this into the chat as we go throughout the meeting, but you can do so by visiting the link on your screen right there. We really appreciate any positive notes you all can send to the staff because they really are working hard and sacrificing a lot to make this work. So just talking about the academics really quickly, we are not eliminating subjects. All of our subjects will be taught, both in person and virtual. The subjects, the content, everything will continue to align. We may need to adjust our school-wide schedule just a little bit. We may need to move some specials here to accommodate the longer arrival and dismissal. We're thinking about possibly doing that in the afternoon block as well. because we recognize that the kids in the building, because of the operational needs, because of the number of students we have, there's going to be a lot of hand washing and other kinds of things that we need to do. So bear with us. Any schedule adjustments will be communicated broadly and to everyone. But again, it's important to understand that they still align. Again, as I said before, your child is going to continue to receive instruction from their child's teacher. We currently have the availability to do that. Again, that's subject to change if there's any type of resignations or leave taking. But right now, we've got everyone signed up to stay with their current teacher. Any of those changes, you would be notified. And again, there's opportunities in all subjects for whole group, small group, direct instruction, and individual support at the discretion of the teacher. ESOL special education interventions, our staff will be in the building supporting students. Some may be doing it virtually. There may be a combination where you've got a group that's both virtual and in the building. There's a variety of models, including small group pullout. I mentioned our grade 4 to 5. The vast majority of our special education students, our students with disabilities, will be coming in phase 1.1 ahead of their general education peers, and that their general education peers will join them in phase 1.2. All other phase 1.2 students will continue to learn virtually until they are directed to phase in for phase 1.2. Please see that notification electronically for further information. Specials will continue, art, music, and PE, and instrumental music. Specialists, art, music, and PE will be providing instruction in your child's classroom. In the same type of model, they'll be working a little virtually, a little bit in person. I do want to put the caveat there, though, that we may make some adjustments to which PE teacher is teaching your child or how they're doing that, because we may be able to do some pretty unique things within the context of the building to provide direct instruction to students that way. So we haven't quite figured that out yet, because it's going to be based on some of that confirmation information the parents share next week. As I mentioned before, we may need to shift the schedules just a little bit school-wide. If we did, we'd let you know. And that instrumental music may be in person or virtual. It depends on the instrument your child plays, the day of the week, and the number of students that are actually in the building doing that instrument on that day. We're still working through the details on that, and more information is forthcoming. Our media center, unfortunately, will not be available to students for browsing. Ms. Walker has been doing a fabulous job with the holds to go, and that will continue both for virtual and in-person students. We're working out a delivery system in the building, TBD, so that we can get books in our kids' hands. They can order them from the library, just like you can from the public library at this point. And media lessons will continue with a potential for in-person and or virtual lessons to happen. I mentioned about the schedule alignment. We're required to have that schedule aligned for the virtual and the in-person. Those that are all virtual have that 90-minute wellness break in the middle where they have lunch, they go run around outside. We have to account for that in the school with lunch and recess. And we're also providing a wellness break that Ms. Strauss, Ms. Gillespie, and Ms. Vicaria are going to oversee. We're going to work on mindfulness with our kids, really doing some de-stressing techniques, because it is something that they're going to need when they come back into the building. As I mentioned before, hand washing will occur throughout the day. This is on several slides, and it doesn't hurt to repeat that information. We've got a lot of hand washing going on. Any specific schedules for those in-person families will be provided at the orientation meetings. We will have lunch every day. It will be in the classrooms for the majority of day for students. Students may bring a lunch from home. They also have the opportunity to do a grab and go from the cafeteria on their way into the building. It is a cold packed meal, so it's not something that's going to be heated up. Again, as always, no student will have the opportunity to heat their meal up at any time during the day. We also are toying with the idea of allowing students to come to the cafeteria, maybe once a week, depending upon the number of classes, and combining possibly 2 different groups into the cafeteria, because you know how expensive our cafeteria is. But we have plenty of space where we can socially distance and allow students to have some sense of normalcy in the cafeteria, to still have lunch in a socially distanced fashion, but we do something a little extra special for them, again, to meet their social emotional needs. So we're still working through that. I also realized the word would is misspelled in the 4th bullet. I'll have that corrected before I send it out to the community. But again, no matter if they're in the cafeteria or in the classroom, they have to remain at their seat in their 6-foot area during the course of lunch. There will still be 30 minutes of recess daily for all students. We're working on a plan to accommodate that and accommodate any weather issues that we have. We'll be able to use the field. We'll be able to use the blacktop. Students may use the playground equipment. There are no shared materials, however, no balls, no hula hoops, no chalk, no highlight, anything like that that would be shared. So we are working through that. Students must wear masks at all times during recess, both indoors and out, and they must be the over-the-ear loop masks. They may not be any type of gaiter or any type of tie behind the head. Those present as safety issues when running around and using playground equipment. Students will have extra masks available to them on the playground, as well as hand sanitizer. And again, they'll be washing hands before and after recess as well. A question came up about testing. This was an interesting one that I got in advance of this meeting. According to the state law, there is still going to be some required testing for students. ESOL students, as example, once they say that they're coming in person and they set foot on the campus, we are required by law to provide the WIDA access test as a screening metric. That is something that we have to do. Currently, grades 3 to 5 students are still scheduled to take the MCAP assessments as well as the MESA assessment, but the MESA assessment is likely going to be done prior to the return of our 4th or 5th grade students anyway, so it would be done virtually. But the language that I have seen is that all grade 3 to 5 in-person students would be required to take the state assessments in grades 3 to 5. I know that that's a question. I know that there's going to be questions about how much time that is. I don't have the answers to that. And I do want to be clear, as last year happened, we didn't have to take the MCAP assessments. We didn't take the end of the year MAP assessments because we received waivers from either the state or the federal government. That is still obviously an option. I can't speak to that at this time, but at this time, it is an expectation of the state that these assessments occur. And so really quickly, I think I'm hitting my mark with time. Partial in-person orientation meetings are coming. You contact Ms. Jacobs only if you want to make a change to your selection. If you're happy with it, don't contact her. That means that you're good to go, and we're planning for you to come back or remain all virtual. And again, there's a form that I'm going to insert into the chat here in a second that at the end of this meeting, if I don't answer your questions from the chat, that you'll be able to ask those questions again, and I'm going to try to get answers to the community as best I can. So with that, Ms. Joslo, that is the end of the presentation. I believe I did that in about 35 minutes, so it leaves us about 25 or so for questions.
Well, you've got plenty to work with. Let's see, we've got here, will there be patrols?
We can't hear you.
Oh. How about now?
Oh, we can't hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Ms. Joss, are you able to hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I dumped the earbuds.
Oh, there you are. All right, wait, can I get a thumbs up? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear Thea? There we go. All right, let's go with the chat.
Will there be patrols?
So I answered that at the beginning. There will be patrols. There always have been patrols, but their roles are certainly going to look different. They won't be patrolling as much as they used to be. We're still working that out. We want the kids to have that experience, but we've got to do it safely.
If you selected in person, do you have to go for all 4 in-person days, or can they go for like 2 and stay virtual for the other 3?
So I think that's going to be a family-to-family circumstance. You know, as I've shared before, if that's what your family needs, and you initially said that you needed the in-person instruction, we're going to honor that. But if you are having doubts or you're not quite sure, it might be like once every 2 weeks or something. My recommendation would be, you know, free that space up. At Ashburton, space is a premium, but please free that space up for a family that could use it. Just my recommendation, but again, parents have the rights to those spots.
What is the plan since Mrs. Perry will be on maternity leave?
So as I shared in the last meeting, any staff member who is going on planned maternity leave, that would be Mrs. Rouse as well, they will have a long-term substitute just as they would if we were all in the building together. And that long-term substitute will be the primary instructional lead in that classroom.
Will the routine for the online kids remain the same? Can you offer assurances that
The last part I heard was, will the routine remain the same? And then there was some assurances I was being asked to make.
Can everyone mute yourselves, please? We're getting a little bit of cross talk.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. See if I can mute all.
Okay. All right. Will the routine for the online kids remain the same, or can you offer any assurances that remote students won't be shortchanged?
So remote students won't be shortchanged. They're still going to have the same access to their teacher. It will look different. You know, as I said at the top of this presentation, that this is going to look different for the in-person kids. It might look slightly different for the virtual kids, but they're still going to have access to the learning from their teacher. The schedule will still be the same. You know, they're still going to be in that cohort with their current classmates. So that's where we are with that.
Will there be background checks on any new staff or helpers that are being hired?
So I'll answer that in two parts. We don't have any new staff that are being hired as helpers. And yes, Maryland state law requires anybody hired into MCPS to undergo a pretty rigorous and long background check. It's called House Bill 486, and any employee is always cleared through that. There's never a circumstance where they're not. So I've gotten that question a couple of times, but that is the answer to that.
Are there plans for HVAC and assuring proper ventilation? Will windows be kept open?
So windows will be open as much as we possibly can. Our MCPS has been working with the HVAC technicians and checking the systems. As I've shared in a couple of these town halls, we were the beneficiaries of a multi-million-dollar HVAC replacement project over the summer. We probably have the newest HVAC system in MCPS, and we have hundreds and hundreds of filters for that system. I don't even know where to store them right now. It's a good problem.
What's the plan for lunch breaks? And then a similar question that came up later. If there's 30 minutes for lunch and 30 minutes for recess, what happens to the other 30 minutes? Oh, I can't hear you.
You're on mute, Greg.
Oh, I thought I was the host. No? Okay. I've been muted a lot. As I shared in the presentation, that 90-minute block for the students that are in person is 3 components. It's a lunch block, a recess block, and a wellness block. 30 minutes of lunch, 30 minutes of recess, and 30 minutes of wellness, but not all at the same time. We'll have about a grade level and a quarter, a grade level and a half in lunch, a grade level and a quarter at recess, a grade level and a quarter doing the wellness piece. So it'll be similar where it's not everybody at the same time, but it is condensed into that 90-minute block. So those are the 3 components there.
If we didn't choose to have the bus pick up our child, can we change that now? Or can they choose to ride the bus some days and not others?
Yes. So there's no magic to the bus idea. Basically, if you want to ride the bus, you show up to the bus stop in your local neighborhood, which will share that information with you, and you can ride the bus. Now, again, you have to, I would be the adult with the children, because you are going to find that sometimes buses are going to pick up a group and then have to circle back and pick up the rest of the group. So just make sure that they are attended by an adult and you're good to go.
If a class has a large amount of students coming in person, will they be split into another room?
The only situation where that happens is what I already talked about, and that's going to be Mrs. Fox's kindergarten class. We're going to split them in half and have them in rooms right next to each other. And both Miss Garrison and Mrs. Sala will be working with the kids back and forth. So that's the only circumstance that we would have with that. Every other class is going to be in the same room as their teacher and not split elsewhere. Again, one of the reasons we don't have the space that we can't just take everybody off the wait list unless there's space for it is because we can't have a circumstance like that for 2 reasons. One is it's not advantageous to those children. And the second piece is I don't have an adult to monitor a 40th classroom.
Are staff, in-person teachers, and paraeducators already vaccinated?
Many of them are. There is no requirement that staff are fully vaccinated by the time they return on March the 15th, but MCPS is working as one avenue to provide staff with access to those vaccine appointments. Some staff may choose not to be vaccinated for a variety of reasons, and we can't compel them to do so. But I will say that the vaccine appointments, as best as we can make them available, are being made available to staff.
Will parents know if a teacher is virtual or in person prior to parent confirmation? It seems a lot of people are thinking that may influence their choice.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I was instructed that I'm not able to do that because there are privacy issues at hand. I can't share with you that somebody is teleworking. Obviously, you'll know at some point when the child is in the room, but not with the teacher, but still receiving instruction from that teacher virtually. Obviously, if a teacher were to take leave or resign, we would notify the community of that as well as who the adult would be that's working with those children at that time. So I know that's going to be a sticking point for some, and I'm unfortunately not in a position to share that information because there are privacy laws at place.
Can a child go back to virtual if in-person isn't working for them?
Yes, and to the benefit, they can stay with the same teachers they currently have. We know that some families may, decide that it's not for them, that the schedule is a little bit too tricky for them to manage. In that case, if a child were to go from in-person to virtual, after a short period of time, we would contact the next family on the wait list and offer them the slot.
How are online children going to be able to communicate with teachers who are actively teaching in the classroom?
So we're still using the same Zoom functions. They're still going to have access to the chat. They can still unmute. All those options are going to be there. The teacher is going to be pretty centrally located next to multiple computing devices as they currently are. There might be opportunities to work about the room, but primarily they're going to be, leading to a virtual and an in-person classroom from a simultaneous location. We've got some pretty innovative and creative teachers that have some ideas on how they can innovate and create, I should say.
Is this the plan until summer break, or will it be refined as we go?
This is the current plan. It is being refined on a daily basis. There will be some refinements that are made transitioning from phase 1.1 to 1.2. Right now, our focus, especially for things like lunch and recess and everything else, is really on that phase 1.1. We know that the numbers change and we might need to make some changes in terms of scheduling as we go into phase 1.2. So there might need to be some adjustments, but this is generally the plan and the approach.
Will the schedule stay the same in terms of starting at 9 a.m.?
Yes-ish. So again, our start time is 9 o'clock. All the buses are going to be targeted to that, but if a bus has to make multiple runs, it might not be exactly 9 o'clock. We're looking to adjust the schedule, especially for those kids that 4 days a week, a different grade level has a special at 9 a.m. We want to make sure kids don't miss that. So we're looking to adjust the schedule to make it work for the arrival and dismissal.
What is the arrangement for temperature checks? What if a child feels ill during the day? Will the rest of the class be notified, paused, or canceled?
So that protocol is forthcoming. It's going to be a collaboration between MCPS and the Department of Health and Human Services. We will have a health tech and or a nurse on site. They're the ones that oversee that. I mentioned that we have triage spaces. We're going to call them isolation spaces for lack of a better term. If children feel symptomatic, they actually won't go to the health room because we've got kids that need to go to the health room for other non-COVID related reasons. They'll be taken to a triage space where the Department of Health and Human Services and or other staff, which could, honestly, it could include myself, are overseeing the child and are communicating with the parents to come pick up. In terms of temperature checks, I'm not clear quite yet on what those protocols are, but we do know that they are coming from the Department of Health and Human Services and MCPS, and we will share them with the community as soon as they're made available. And in terms of, by the way, in terms of quarantining and quarantining, communication, notification, that's all going to be in that protocol, and it's going to be outlined, and it also is going to be on a case-by-case basis. So just be aware of that as well.
What about kindergartners that take the bus? Will someone be able to help them?
Help them. So we'll have adults receiving buses, bus students. We'll have adults receiving car riders. We'll have adults in the hallway. We also know that our brand new kindergartners and even our brand new 1st through 5th graders that have never been in the building, we're going to need to pay some special attention. We've never been in this position, but we're trying to think creatively about how to orient them to the building. It's going to be overly, there's going to be an overly large amount of signage everywhere. We'll have adults positioned throughout the building to help them to get where they're supposed to be. So we will make it work.
What's the criteria for deciding to implement phase 1.2 earlier?
That is not at my pay grade. That is not a decision that I make. That is a decision that is made by MCPS and the Board of Education. I believe it comes down to metrics and some other factors, but I can't speak to that. That might be something discussed at the February 23rd board meeting.
How will students with IEPs who remain virtual continue to receive support?
They'll receive it with the same, so when you're all virtual, you have what's called an IDLP, an individualized distance learning plan. That will continue to be in place. You'll continue to receive the same services and supports. There might be some shifts in between who's providing those services and supports, but that will continue. For parents with students with disabilities that come into the building, we're going to talk through the process with them about taking the IEP, because there's going to be a component where they're in the building where the IEP applies, and then they're going to be virtual where the IDLP applies. We're going to work with families individually on that.
Will the teachers have a few days to set up their classrooms?
March 8th, 9th, and 10th. March 8th is a no school day for students. It's now a professional day for teachers. March 9th and 10th is an asynchronous day for students. Information is forthcoming to parents about what that actually means. So once we get that information, you're either going to get it from me or one of the large broadcast messages from MCPS. So stay tuned.
How will the new rules be taught to the kids? Will there be a virtual presentation or something for them?
So there's going to be a virtual and an in-person presentation. We're trying to front load as much of that as we can, but we also recognize that there's going to be some reteaching and retraining of students when they enter the building. Even if you're a fifth grader that's been with us for 6 years, it's not going to be the same. And so the ways that we've operated before are going to need to be adjusted, and we will be teaching our children how to do that. Just like the beginning of school, there's going to be some heavy emphasis on routines and procedures right from the get-go with students. So we can also do some of that prep work in advance. We can do it through video. We can do it through some other measures, and we do plan to do so. We're going to, by the way, we're involving the TQ Star in this. Ms. Jacobs has offered to make an oversized mask for the TQ Star to make it authentic. We're trying to think through it at every grain size and make it kid-friendly. That's really our goal, because we know that this is going to be scary for some, and it's going to be the best thing in the world for others. And so we're excited to see them either way.
Will AES be able to work to keep families on the same A or B week? And then the same question through middle school.
As I said last time, I can't help with the middle school or the high school. We already have a process to make sure that all of our siblings are in the school building on the same schedule. K-2 students are obviously in the building all week, every week together for at least those 4 days. And what we've decided is we've identified every sibling in grade 3, 4, and 5, and we're making sure that they are paired on the same week, so they have the same schedule. And obviously, if they have siblings in K-2, it doesn't matter which A or B week, because the kids are in the building every week. So as I said, I've said this for almost 10 months now. We are working really hard. We understand the impact on families of all sizes and shapes, and that is absolutely an emphasis of ours. And you'll see that information in your selection confirmation letter.
Will virtual students be able to take the assessments, or is that not recommended?
So I don't have the information at that time. As I said, the only thing I saw about assessments had to do with in-person students. So I know that for a fact that we cannot test remotely the ESOL students. I believe that there's other test security measures. Again, these aren't our assessments. These are provided by the state or other outside agencies. So it really depends upon what their rules and regs are. But some of them will be provided only in person.
What will happen if a family or a teacher travels? Is there testing or quarantine required or recommended?
So as I shared, there's going to be some information coming out about that. I've gotten word from a number of families that are looking to travel over the spring break, which happens to be right before the beginning of phase 1.2. Whenever the guidance comes out about that, we'll share that with the community so that you're well informed. And obviously, if you had to quarantine for any period of time and you had selected in person, following the conclusion of that, the quarantine requirements, you would come right back to the building.
Can you please let us know if there are things that we can provide to the school, things the teachers need or anything like that?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we're trying to put together is it's like the summer before school all over again. We're creating a recommended student supply list, again, because everything has to be individual. We'll provide that to you. We'll also probably solicit donations of materials and items for our teachers. We're going to work through them. We really liked the wish list approach that we took. I think it was last winter, I believe, where we did the wish tree. So we'll definitely work with maybe through PTA on something like that to help communicate that. There's some pretty unique ways that we can do that work. And thank you for asking, by the way.
Will there be movement breaks throughout the day?
Yes, there will continue to be movement breaks in person and virtually, for all of our students. So yes.
Can you please explain how it will work for fifth graders who change teachers for different subjects? Will there be in-person instruction for all of the subjects?
Yes, there will be in-person instruction. Either they're going to receive it virtually from a teacher that's working remotely or in the building in person. They will not at this time be transitioning from one room to the next. So the math and the ELA times all align at the grade level. So that's one of the nice things about that. But there are circumstances where if you start the day with Miss Burton and you have her for math, but you go to a different teacher for literacy, you might be on headphones learning through the Chromebook from the teacher that's down the hall. Again, part of that has to do with space availability and our work to limit transitions for students.
For virtual, will the teacher be seen close up on the screen, or are students looking at the full class and the teacher from a distance?
My belief would be that you're looking closely at the teacher, again, because they're typically going to be situated close to that computer, but there will certainly be circumstances where the teacher might need to step away to work with a particular student. I do know that MCPS is looking at microphone systems that allow a teacher to continue to allow the teacher to move some while also still being heard, but they'll still be able to interact with the students that are on the Zoom as much.
Is there any aftercare within school?
So I have a meeting at just a few short hours with Rockville Daycare. Guidance is coming to the daycare providers from MCPS. We're going to work with them to continue the collaboration for both before, after, and possibly continue the during care as well. It's in our heads that all of that will continue, but we have to work through that process, which is not an Ashburton process. But we're going to work really hard to make that, because we know some of our families rely on that, as well as the equity hub that exists.
I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. Afternoon bus. Can you comment on returning home bus arrangements? I imagine if a bus is full on one lap.
Yeah, so it's going to be the same challenge that we face. And again, we're going to be working with the Department of Transportation, because in theory, let's say a bus does 2 runs and it picks up half the kids first and then loops back, picks up the second half. We're going to come up with this systematic way that a kid is on like green 1 or something, and so that you can kind of ballpark the arrival time based on when we can get those kids on the bus. That's going to take us some time to figure out, because as I shared earlier, there's not a sign up for the bus. You might just show up at the bus stop and then show up at school. We're going to know that the kid came on that bus. We're going to need to collect some information from you via our traditional methods around maybe they come on green but leave on gray for some reason. We're going to work through all that. We're going to create a system. This is brand new territory for us, but we're already thinking about that.
Can walkers be released at dismissal on their own, or do they need to be picked up by a parent? And also, can walkers hang out on the playground after school?
Walkers cannot hang out on the playground after school. Our rule was always they needed to go home first to get an adult to come back with them. We're going to ask that our playground not be used, because we are going to be dismissing from multiple doorways to make it an efficient dismissal. If that changes, we'll let the community know. But also remember that our building service team has to spend some time cleaning and sanitizing outside as well as inside. And the other thing is we will be releasing walkers probably in smaller waves so that they all don't come together. And we will be dismissing them. They do not need an adult, as far as I know, to pick them up unless they are younger. Then we want that. We're not going to release kindergartners, out the door on their own.
Will there be any summer instruction? What about 5th graders transitioning to North Bethesda?
So I like that question, because I can share that MCPS is already working through the process of getting that up and running. I was in a meeting on Friday or Thursday last week where they already are doing that. It's going to look something similar to like it did last year, but principals are going to have way more time to plan and get it up and running. Because again, I credit Holly Hill, and many of you had the opportunity to work with her last year. That was her pet project, but she had about 9 days to build an entire summer program. She did it with Melissa Rubin, and it went off fantastically. So this time we'll be able to advertise it and develop it with a little bit more time on our hands. So it is 8 o'clock. I'm willing to go another 15 minutes if we've got a bunch of questions in the chat. I want to make sure we honor as many of them as we can. So feel free to drop off. This again is going to still be recorded. But Thea, you can keep going. I'll give another 15 minutes. Then I'm going to go shovel ice.
You're likely to share the presentation after the fact also, right?
Yes, so I will be sending the recording of this meeting plus the presentation. I will correct slide 26, bullet 4, the word would. I will add an O to it so that we're all clear.
Okay, we can keep going. You do have a lot going on in the chat here.
All right.
What will in-person kids do during currently scheduled intervention times when they're not participating in an intervention?
So that would be additional time to work with the teacher in the building or the adult in the room, or in all honesty, we also still have to provide interventions within the building. And so that's where some of that schedule adjustment may need to happen, because we've got some at home and some in the building, there still will be interventions and other supports provided.
Okay, scrolling. Sorry, I usually write them down in another window, but I got behind because there's a
That's
lot.
all right.
Guys, you guys have a lot of questions. Um, how will you ensure that the bathrooms are clean and people are staying socially distant there?
So we're going to put up a lot of signage. Our building service team, as they always have done, and probably in an increased manner, will be cleaning and sanitizing restrooms on an ongoing basis. We're also going to be monitoring them differently. There's going to be less of this just students kind of wandering the hallways going to the restroom. So we're going to be, any child that leaves a classroom to go to the restroom is going to be signing in, signing out. You know, it helps us with contact tracing and other things. And then many of our classrooms actually have restrooms inside of the classroom, especially for the younger guys that they'll be able to use.
So can we pull out of the instrumental class in person if we're not comfortable with it?
Yes, that would be an option. That would always be an option, yes.
What's the plan for second graders that currently join another second grade class for specials?
They would, the teachers will be coming to the classes to provide that instruction. Some students may be accessing that virtually, but that is something that we have to consider. So we're working on how to do that with either the teacher in the room or another adult in the room. That's a great question.
Oh my gosh, we're caught up.
No.
Well, what are we going to do with the next 12 minutes?
We're not caught up.
And that, I think it's something more that skip.
There's a question that's been asked multiple times that we're really trying to get an answer to. We really would like to understand what's going on with the teachers, how they're going to be teaching. Are they going to be sitting looking at a screen all day? Are they using the Promethean board? How's that going to work? Are they going to be interacting with our children at all? Or is it just the same that we have at home, just in person? I've asked, other people have asked, and we really would like an answer on that.
Sure, and I apologize if I haven't been clear along the way, but yes, there will be some of exactly what you just described. There will be teachers working on the Promethean boards. I met with the staff today. Many of them are interested in how they can connect their personal devices to the Promethean board to provide a better teaching tool to the students. So they'll be using the Promethean board. There will be interactions with the students that are in front of them. There will be times where the students that are in front of them, it's not necessary to use the Chromebook because they can use the Eureka Math Book and they don't need to be on camera for that. So I can't say that it's going to be one way or another, but yes, you will see increased direct contact with the adults in the room and the children in the room. If your child's teacher happens to be teaching remotely or teaching virtually, that it's going to look the same, but they're going to have that adult in the room who's also going to be projecting things on the Promethean board, can also provide that support to students in the room. So that's the basics of what it is going to look like.
Okay, we've gathered a couple of more questions. If your child uses a personal device at home, can they leave the school device at school to use and then use the other one when they're home?
I think that makes sense. It would cut down on them going back and forth. We'll just figure out a way that we can manage that. But I believe that would be an option, yeah. We'll work through that with our teachers. What we don't want to do is have a kid be without a device should something be needed, and especially on a Wednesday, a rotating week, or a freak snowstorm closes school buildings, something along those lines.
For teachers who are virtual, will there always be an adult in the classroom?
Yes, there will always be an adult.
Will there be breakout rooms with in-person kids and virtual kids?
Yes, so there's students will still be interacting with each other in breakout rooms. Breakout rooms could also be used to support virtual learners while in-person learners are being supported directly by the teacher. You might have a combination of kids that are in the room but working with their virtual peers. Again, that's going to be content to content, lesson to lesson. Our teachers are the ones that are going to be making the decisions around that.
How often will teachers and staff be tested for COVID since vaccines aren't mandatory?
So there currently is no testing requirement. If something were to come out with MCPS and the Department of Health and Human Services, we would certainly do that. We do have an employee protocol that involves when someone is suspected or confirmed to have contracted COVID, when they're symptomatic but they haven't received test results, or if they've been in proximity to somebody else that tested positive or is exhibiting symptoms. In all those cases, there's a reporting process they have to go through, as well as a quarantine requirement that does occur. And so I do want to be upfront to say that could happen. And what could end up happening is your child's teacher who was in person suddenly needs to quarantine for 2 weeks, and school administration has to backfill the classroom with another adult to support, while that teacher either moves to a telework situation or is actually sick and needs to take leave. At that point, we would provide ongoing instruction to all students, virtually and in person.
Who are the adults in the classroom, if not the teacher? Do they have a background in education?
Some of them might be our paraeducators who have always been an instructional support to us. We also have other non-classroom based teachers who can serve in that role as well.
Will the Zoom link for office hours with you allow parents to ask private questions without other families listening in?
Yeah, so that's the intent. And I do want people to forgive me, because if I get an onslaught of 200 people per hour, it's going to be difficult. But the idea is that you come into the waiting room and I'll bring you in one at a time, and I'll be able to answer your questions that way. I do want to be honest to say, though, that please don't expect 30-minute conversations. I've got multiple of these opportunities. It's just an opportunity for you all to connect with me. I know many of you have been flooding my email inbox with questions. I've been somewhat delayed in responding to all of them. I'm certainly going to continue to be available via email as well. I just know with the 26th being an important date in people's minds, I want to make sure that I'm honoring the questions you have and talking specifics with you if you need. Again, if the questions are just general in nature, hopefully you got them from the presentation tonight, or you can use the link that we'll share at the end of this presentation here to submit those questions in another manner.
If a positive case is identified, will the children also be quarantined?
As I shared before, that guidance is coming from MCPS and the Department of Health and Human Services. It's going to be handled on a case-by-case basis. Once that information is available, we'll be sharing that with the community.
Can we find out where we are on the wait list if, for example, we're requesting to change from virtual to in person?
No, we aren't required to provide that. Again, we're going to work to get as many of our families off the wait list as possible. We'll be working with the student well-being team throughout, but the wait list could be very different from one classroom to the next, so we aren't required to provide that.
Is there a chance that their current teacher may not be their teacher going forward?
As I shared at the beginning of the presentation, there's always that chance. Right now, it's not due to any type of resectioning or reassignment of staff. So your child's teacher won't be in the classroom next door. But if a staff member were to take leave or resign from the system, then yes, I would have to find another teacher for your child.
So you mentioned siblings and the alphabet being used for division of the A and B groups in the upper grades. Will there be other considerations such as male-female balance, et cetera?
So let me clarify. I did not say that alphabet was part of that equation. In fact, we're doing it pretty innovatively. What we're trying to do, and we've gotten a lot of feedback from our teachers, is that we're allowing them some say in which students would come in A week or B week. Again, siblings will come in the same week. Don't worry there. But if it's better, if we can group students in a way that the students in the room can get more of a direct instructional approach because they're similarly grouped, or they're reading a similar book, or they're in a particular class, we're trying to make that work because, again, it increases or maximizes those direct instructional opportunities. So we are not considering other factors at this time. We're not considering friendships. I want to be very clear. We're not considering pods. We're not considering bus routes. We're not considering the other things. At this point, our goal is to provide an academic experience and also to get kids in and out either on an A week or a B week schedule. So our feeling is that this actually promotes the academics, which is what our parents really do want.
Is reporting a positive COVID test mandatory?
For employees, yes.
Can we find out if our teacher has been vaccinated?
No. I'm sorry, I don't even know. They're not required to report that to me, nor are they required to report that to MCPS.
If we opted in during the survey, are we guaranteed a spot?
Yep, as I've said before, if you opted in for in-person instruction, we are planning on your return. You are one of those 500 and I believe it's 508 people that we've been planning for all along, and that's why we have 39 teachers scheduled to provide instruction to your students.
And now I'm seeing a lot of thank yous from folks for you and the staff.
We appreciate that.
If a family or child has a positive COVID test, are they required to let you know?
People have been letting us know. And again, that protocol, because we haven't had students in the building quite yet, that protocol is forthcoming. I can imagine that there would be some sort of requirement for that. Just as like we don't, if you have a child with a fever for any reason, they shouldn't be coming into the building, you can call us and let us know. If there's a case of COVID, we would work through our, whatever that protocol ends up being, and MCPS would conduct some contact tracing based upon that.
Okay, and now still some thank yous. Does anyone feel like I've wantonly avoided their question?
They are great questions, by the way.
Yeah, I've got a lot. Very engaged group.
So with that, I'm gonna drop into the chat a couple of times here the link to, if you do have further questions. I hope you all were able to capture the thank a teacher link as well. I want to commend Thea. This is a road show that I see as having a lot of potential. We'll be calling the Presidential Debate Commission and offering her services. She does a wonderful job facilitating. I have appreciated it all along because I think we're able to tackle a lot of the questions that parents do have. So again, next steps, you'll receive information from us about your confirmation selection. We'll be in touch about orientation dates. And those of you that are wishing to change from in-person to virtual, contact Ms. Jacobs and she'll handle that transaction for you. If you're looking to go from virtual to in-person, also contact Ms. Jacobs and we'll work through our space availability process to make it work for everyone. Again, I promise you that there will be updates and upgrades as we go, and we'll make sure that we get that information to staff. It looks like we've got another question to ask.
Yeah, before, I have ignored one. Is the counseling staff talking to classrooms currently to help prep the kids about returning to the building?
So Ms. Strauss, I don't know, she's here with us tonight, but I don't know if there's been any work currently, but I can imagine that there'll be a partner in the work that comes out moving forward. So she can definitely talk about that in the future. Ms. Strauss, do you want to come off mic now or?
Sure. Yes, we will be talking to the students. We're waiting for the Board of Education and MCPS actually make their decision about the reopening, but also they are vetting lessons for us to provide to the students. So we'll be talking to the students about bringing them back into the building and making them feel comfortable. And Ms. Gillespie and I are always here for your students.
One of the things that I'll add is that in addition to the work around the social emotional needs of students, I want to say that Ms. Strauss and Ms. Gillespie, Ms. Vicaria, and many across MCPS really are committed to providing training and support to meet the social emotional needs of our staff as well. We want to make sure that the adults in the building are taken care of as much as the children, because this is going to be different for everyone. And we're excited to see kids, but we also have to wrap our heads around with the reality that this is going to look different. So I do know that we are considering that as well. And again, if you have the opportunity, please thank a star. Reach out to us, let us know, give us the note that we can share with your child's teacher or another staff member.
And I think one quick note, Mr. Mullenholz, I went to the link, the reopening questions link, and it's asking me to confirm my identity as my daughter who doesn't use this computer.
No, I can make that change. That just means that means that the thank a star one is also the same way. I'm going to open it up to non-MCPS staff. It's a safeguard that we have to make sure that our documents aren't getting out there, but I'll make that change right at the end of this meeting. And if there's no other questions, again, we appreciate the time that you spent with us here today. We'll be sending out the recording of this meeting as well as the deck. We look forward to meeting with the parents that are coming in person for those orientation meetings. We'll be in touch about those. And again, I cannot express enough appreciation for the support of the community, the PTA, and everyone else. Ashburton continues to be a very special place and will so even if it's in a hybrid version of it. So everyone have a fantastic evening, and we will see you when we see you next. Awkward wave.
Bye.